QStar is something that's going to break NSA encryption.
If it is, then what's the implications for us in the next 6 months to a year?
Yeah, I don't know if we want to get into conspiracy theories here either, which is the hardest part here. It's like, it seems very blatant that that's what's happening, but like if we try to call them out for exactly that, like it gets so tough, right?
Okay, I got you. I think that's probably the most important thing we could cover in this entire video. So with this in mind, how do you see the best way for people to future-proof their skills and their business and their life moving forward with these kind of updates in mind? Hello everyone and welcome to the Morningside AI channel. Today I have my CTO Spencer here to discuss the QStar advancements that we're hearing out of OpenAI, what this means for businesses, what this means for you as potentially agency owners, and what it means for the space moving forward and the kind of things that we need to be looking out for moving forward with the space. So Spencer, it's great to have you on again.
Thanks so much, Lee. Great to be on here again.
Awesome. Well, a lot of stuff, a lot of news swirling around, obviously, the past couple of weeks, really. I think it's important to get on here and have another discussion, help people who are potentially feeling a bit lost with this QStar stuff going around. There's been a lot of attention on it. And I think if you could just start off by giving us a breakdown of what to your understanding QStar is and what it could potentially be. And I think that's a good place to start.
Yeah, definitely. So first and foremost, I think the key thing that you said in there was what I think it is, because there's a lot of noise that's being kind of pushed around here right now. Depending on who you ask, QStar is something that's going to break NSA encryption. It's going to render all of our financial transactions completely moot and possibly take over the world in a Skynet fashion. More reasonably, it might actually just be a new method of training models, albeit an incredibly promising one. There's a couple of papers that were released earlier this year by OpenAI and specifically Ilya, talking about a new method of basically training the models analogous to reinforcement learning with human feedback in a way that actually promotes chained thinking or long-term strategic thinking. So this is going to be incredibly important for more complex chains of thought and ways of reasoning in order to do more complex things using tools and using logic.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that's part of what my limited understanding of it was, that this QStar potentially allows us to get the model to zoom out of it and understand the environment that it's operating within, and it's not just a predicting the next token or the next series of words. It's able to zoom out a little bit and see sort of a higher level breakdown of how it's operating in the environment that it's working in. Is that kind of in the right direction?
Both yes and no. So I think the key thing on that is that, yes, zooming out and trying to understand things sequentially as they go on there. One of the key portions is there's two different types of learning that are going on here, reward models, so to speak. Outcome-based, which is similar to when your teacher used to give you math problems and say you have to, whether or not you got the answer right, and then process supervised reward models. And that's making sure that you're doing the work to get the right answer. And this falls into that kind of latter camp where it's checking and doing a reward at each of the steps along the way to make sure that it's doing the reasoning to get the right answer, not just the right answer itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, from my limited understanding, as I was saying, it seems like they've got being able to get it to grade those answers in the trees. There was some talk about tree of thought as well. How does that tree of thought fit into chain of thought prompting and all of that, all the different acronyms and jargon that's floating around at the moment?
Yeah, oh man, that one absolutely exploded, especially when you get into graphs. Like it starts always very simple as a chain, and then goes into a tree, and then goes into a graph of thought. So essentially with that, what they're trying to do is basically at each step along the way, come up with a chain of reasoning. So one thought after the other that builds up and on top of each other in order to get to your final answer. So where the naming of QStar actually comes from is actually a portmanteau of A star, which is a graph search over these kind of nodes, and Q learning, which is basically a reward function for saying which is the right way to go. So combining these two together, it's how do you traverse that graph from node to node or thought to thought in order to get to the right answer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've seen a lot of graphs about how there's say you have a 20 by 10 graph and it's trying to get from one corner to the other. And there's multiple different ways that you can try to get the computer to figure out how to get there. And this seems like it's a more efficient way of, even if it bumps into obstacles along the way, it can still figure out ways around it. So when you take that and zoom it out and apply it to a sort of large language model problem solving situation. It's a lot more complex than going A to B on sort of 2D plane, but it's solving problems. And if you run into an issue, there's some kind of frustration component or anger that gives feedback to the system, and it allows it to go, okay, we need to go in a different direction. Is that kind of within the ballpark as well?
Yeah, that's exactly it. And to maybe remove ourselves, I find for myself, I get caught up in a lot of the technical jargon with all of this, and it's not very applied. So when we're using these models, I think we've all had it a few times before, is that when you try to mention something or get it to do a task, sometimes it'll get caught up in the middle and make one wrong decision, and then that kind of throws the entire thing off. Let's say if you were to try and get the model to maybe write you a poem, and then it gets caught in the middle phrase or the middle verse that's there and goes off on a weird tangent. This is a way of training the models to make sure that it doesn't get thrown off in the middle, that it's understanding that at that middle point, correcting itself to go back in the proper direction that's there. So what this ends up being is just a more fluid way of doing multi-step tasks.
Gotcha. I want to go back to that encryption point that you mentioned before, regarding how this can completely just like blow the scene open and change our world as we know it by being able to decrypt these without keys, be able to decrypt certain encryption processes. So feels a little bit like a Y2K kind of moment for us at this moment, obviously on a bit of a bigger scale. But what do you think the reality is? And I think bringing this back down to earth a bit, as I know you'd like to do, what's the real risk here, and how does it affect those kind of broader integrations to our world in terms of decrypting and all that sort of stuff, if this really is what they say it is?
Yeah, I mean, I probably have to hedge my bets here, because if it turns out that they do have Skynet there, that would be better that I could see that coming. I'm not entirely sold that that is the case. But that being said, being able to do these sequential problems, being able to figure out math, because that's where it started, that is a step along the road to be able to decipher these codes and to do more troublesome and kind of elaborate mathematics, such as code breaking. So that is a portion. That being said, there's alternative ways that are out there, and maybe this forms a portion of it. We've all kind of heard of quantum computing and some of the breakthroughs there that'll endanger certain forms of encryption as well. So I think that that's probably a more likely angle in which we're going to see that kind of Y2K-like bug. But this could be a step along the way of learning how to implement those types of algorithms itself, and then potentially even use them.
Mm-hmm. And I guess the question is, like, what is this? One, I suppose there's two key questions that myself and the audience want to know. One, is this legit? Is this even real? Is this really what they say it is? And two, if it is, then what's the implications for us in the next 6 months to a year? Like, does this? I had someone in my community ask me like what my thoughts are. Like, generally asking to the community, like, has anyone heard about this Q star thing? Like, what do you think? And my answer was like, if there's two options: either the world's going to end and this thing's real, or it's not, and everything's going to be fine, or it's just going to continue as expected. And you can only really plan for the second one, was my answer. So, if we can clear a bit of the clutter and the rubbish away, what do you really think on those 2 points?
Yeah, I think that kind of fantastic events require a fantastic explanation. So where over the course of the weekend, we saw obviously Sam Altman get kicked out of OpenAI. I think everyone's just kind of looking for a reason as to why that happened. And OpenAI having some kind of amazing technology that just came out that's going to potentially overthrow the world, that's on par with what we just saw. So I think we're all kind of looking for that explanation. And I at the risk of possibly getting too conspiratorial, I could see them not rejecting that narrative to make sure that they're viewed as competent as possible with this kind of tech. So realistically, once again, I think, and I could be wrong, but the consensus that I've heard so far is that this is actually just an improved way of doing this kind of training for these models. And the best way that you can prepare yourself for this and look forward to the future is that these models are going to get increasingly sufficient and proficient at accomplishing sequential tasks. So we've had that where it's not only A to B, but A, B, C, and then possibly even a lateral step there as well. So I think that's going to be what's coming down the road, same as before. We just may have accelerated that path a little bit.
Mm-hmm. So what you're saying is that it's potentially not as big of an advancement as they've made it out to seem, and there is, with bearing in mind not to seem too conspiratorial, but this may have had some sort of key role in the drama that's played out. Is that what you're saying, Spencer, or my conspiratorial brain picking up?
Yeah, man, I don't know if I want to go down that particular route in this video of like just completely cutting it off and saying this is nothing. Yeah, I don't know if we want to get into conspiracy theories here either. Which is the hardest part here. It's like, it seems very blatant that that's what's happening, but like if we try to call them out for exactly that, like it gets so tough,
Yeah.
right? I think ultimately this is actually the progression of a series of events that have happened for a long time at OpenAI. And there was some very cryptic comments that were made by Sam Altman in the days preceding his termination, in which he referred to pushing back the veil of ignorance. And that he had experienced it for the fourth time in his career, and he was always happy when he did. So I think that there might be some credence to the fact that there was likely some kind of large reveal that had happened when the paper was originally released. Just actually looking at it right now, but let's verify step by step. It was released in May, I believe, earlier this year. And they had mentioned the fact that they were able to use this process-based supervision in an automated fashion to be able to do it at scale. And they had mentioned that they were able to do grade school level math. If they've been able to work on this for the past few months with sufficient compute, I think that there could be and likely is some very large reveals in the future about the ability of these models. I'm incredibly excited to see, and I think everybody should be, for some of the things that are going to come out specifically around GPTs and their ability to actually do tasks for us. They're still broad-based, so they're still going to need a lot of people to help implement them in the different situations that they have. This isn't AGI yet, but it's getting increasingly more powerful. That's going to allow for a lot more business use cases.
Yeah, and so I guess the key breakthrough here is if this really is what they say it is sort of the synthetic data that can be generated with this stuff and allowing computers to get involved and take that human in the loop. Sort of the break or the limiter that was preventing us from being able to rapidly train and iterate over these models, right?
Yeah, that's it. Google had released a paper earlier this year where they were talking about the fact that they actually got almost like comparable answers or comparable results by using a large language model in order to review some of the outputs from their models. And I think that this is maybe a realization of that in a very specific framework.
Mm-hmm. And so if we were to see this be rolled into some kind of product or start to impact the space and the landscape of the space in the coming months and years, how do you think this will affect the products by OpenAI if it is, again, if it does get implemented how we think it will? How will this affect their products potentially, and what do you think this will mean for other products we see with other companies as well? Will they be looking to do something similar?
Conveniently, we actually just got an announcement earlier on today in which they said that they're able to support multiple providers for GPTs now. And I think that might be a hat tip towards the fact that as these models are getting better, that they're going to be able to leverage a number of different tools almost at the same time. We've already seen parallel tool execution that's going on. So being able to use this tree of thoughts and that kind of processing paradigm to go through and execute a number of tools sequentially and at the same time is going to be very powerful coming forward.
Okay, I got you. I think that's probably the most important thing we could cover in this entire video is how that all of this parts, like what does it actually boil down to, and how is it going to affect business owners who are looking to implement the stuff, agency owners who are looking to sell the stuff. It's that this may make that tool calling capability and the overall proficiency of these GPTs or these assistants built on the Assistants API and the whole agent side of things at OpenAI could make it a lot more proficient because it's able to better execute multi-step tasks and multiple function calls, right?
Yeah, and one of the key points in there is hallucinations. Like it was able to clamp down a lot on the hallucinations that it was experiencing. So I think we all have a little bit of distrust when it comes to the execution of tools on there, specifically around like dollar purchases. But if they can um, clamp down on those hallucinations when performing actions, then you can have something that's a lot more actionable for businesses.
And would that be done by having some sort of supervisory assistant or a model that's overlooking the entire process and then the decision-making process under the tools? Or is there some other, is it more of just we're using a ton of data on past tool executions that worked and using that to sort of go back and train the model to make it better? Like, is it reinforcement learning? Is it getting more data from the successful executions? I know we've talked about this a lot privately, but how is this actually going? Is it supervision, or is it actually just getting better at executing them?
I think so. There's a couple of interesting points in there. First and foremost, this will be training that's done before you get your hands on the model. So this might be a portion of reinforcement learning with human feedback, and maybe reinforcing of that in order to make sure that the mathematical skills are better. Or it could be implemented in, yes, specifically tool execution and making sure that those are being executed appropriately. And maybe a group setting of models. I believe they call it group of experts. So it could be in that particular case that that's what they're doing there. I think what the interesting thing for me is that if you take this algorithm, it's not actually specifically just for OpenAI and their large language models. I think you could actually see this type of algorithm and process being used in other spheres. So we could see it being used at generation for images to make sure that they're actually more cohesive in the end products that they're coming out with, as well as even the tool manufacturers themselves, or the tool developers, and making sure that they can execute a series of steps effectively on their own by training using this reinforcement learning method.
And forgive me for being a noob on the side of things, but like, how would this actually bolt into their existing products? Like, as we're talking about before, but like, is this going to be sort of ingrained into how they make GPT-5 or something? Like, what is this? Or is this going to be a bolt on to some of their other services?
Yeah, I think it's just going to be.
Don't know for sure, but like, if you had to guess, in terms of I think even for myself, who I'm not some sort of, I don't have the training and expertise that you have to understand how these systems actually fit together. So for myself and the audience, like, how do you just kind of stuff this new kind of thing onto their existing technology?
Yeah, I think for them, it's actually just going to be a training method. So this is when we see the end products, GPT-5 or 4.5 or however they wish to release that. I think that this is going to be a portion of how they're refining those models to be able to ship out. I think that also means that we're going to see a large increase when it comes to GPT-5 in terms of math and even spatial reasoning, to be able to understand what things are going on and vaguely causality. How one thing impacts the next, and so on down the line that's there. So yeah, we'll see that integrated into future products at a very core level.
And what do you think this would affect in terms of their rollout, like their roadmap as well? Because if we're able to suddenly start generating a ton of synthetic data and using AI in the training process, wouldn't that potentially speed up the like iteration, like the cycle time, allowing us to get more stuff done in less time? But then also on the other side of that, what's the costs incurred if they are using so many API calls to get this thing actually managing the data and generating the sample data?
Yeah, I think that cuts right to the core of where the cost centers really are for OpenAI. Is that labeling all of this data is no doubt expensive, but compute is equally incredibly expensive. So insofar as they can minimize the budget by automating the data collection that they have, then that's fantastic.
I guess, pulls away from one side and you could just sort of handle, like, if you're already paying the humans to do it, then you can just take it over and pay that to the machine.
And the big winner here, as usual, is NVIDIA, I would imagine. Yeah. Yeah, as always.
Still kicking yourself for not buying that stock.
As most people are, I think, after 200% gain or whatever over the past couple of years.
You're sitting pretty.
I was lucky to catch into that one last December.
Part-time AI expert, part-time expert investor.
When I started realizing that everybody wanted me to know this thing and they were the only ones who could allow me to do it, he grabbed some shovels pretty quick. But yeah, I think it's going to be interesting from that side, like just how quickly, because even from their perspective, they could train these models and get them out quicker, and maybe that gives them a competitive edge. The problem is, like, it still costs tens, hundreds of millions of dollars to train one of these models, so that it does still fit into their best interest that they keep the model releases consistent, um, and roll them out over time. But once again, the big one there is like the math reasoning is going to be off the charts, and how powerful the next one is going to be will be considerably better than what we're expecting.
An interesting question is going to be the open source community, because now the cat's out of the bag with this thing is what they say it is. Like the principles and sort of mathematical foundation of it has been determined by people putting these articles and stuff out. So what do you think the open source community is going to react to this, and how quick do you think they're going to be able to put something together that's comparable to what they've got?
So reading through the paper, I think the reason why they released that paper in the first place is because they had GPT-4 and like the advanced reasoning capabilities that they have there. So in order to make a model like this work, you actually have to have a critic, so to speak, to be able to look at the outputs that are happening there and give them some kind of score for correctness. And you really only get that with GPT-4 so far. So garbage in, garbage out in a way of, if you don't have the model already, you can't really train the downstream models in order to train the better models as you go on. I think that's the biggest one is, as we see better and better publicly available models and the competitor models that are out there, they might be able to catch up, but OpenAI, as always, has that nice little lead.
So with this in mind, how do you see the best way for people to future-proof their skills and their business and their life moving forward with these kind of updates in mind?
I think the biggest thing, and I've kind of harped on it for a while now, is tools. Developing tools and making sure that you are providing tools if you have that option. The best business to run in a gold rush is selling shovels and picks. So I think that's always still a very good play that's in here. Additionally, making sure that you're aware of these changes as they're happening, and up to date as to the capabilities of the models that are going to be coming out. You can take on maybe contracts and talk to your clients about these things and plan into the future about what's likely coming down the road. You do have to take a lot of these announcements with a grain of salt, but there can be, I think, a measure of optimism around this, that there might actually be some fire to this smoke in terms of the capabilities here, and start getting yourself ready for what might be coming down the road.
Mm-hmm. Yes, I think I'm going to be doing a lot of work on YouTube on the tooling side of things. I think there's a lot of education needing to be done. I think custom actions, custom functions, tools, whatever you want to call them, for someone who's not necessarily of a development background, they can be a little bit hard to wrap your head around, as there are quite a lot of things going on. So there'll be a bunch of YouTube content coming out there. But I think I keep saying, going into 2024, I think being able to build tools is going to be one of the most valuable skills, of at least highest demand skills, and thereby typically going to be most valuable as well within 2024. So if you guys are watching this and you want to be sort of on the front foot of keeping up with how to firstly understand tools, and then secondly how to create them, there's going to be a lot of content, probably some coming out here on the Morningside AI channel, but also on my main channel as well. So if you haven't already, head over there and subscribe, then we'll be available over there soon. I do want to circle back a little bit to the idea of selling shelves in a gold rush. And I think a question that's it's important to ask, and it just comes to me now, like what, in say crypto, it's like what's the gold that people are chasing? It's the gains, right? It's the making money off the price graph go up. People make money off that. That's the gold. And selling the shovels would be selling the way that people can get there, right? In this AI space, we say selling shovels and the gold in this, but what's the gold that people are chasing here? Is it the increase in productivity? Is it the decreased costs? Like what's the goal that we're actually chasing here in the space, or at least other people are chasing and we're trying to facilitate? What do you think the goal is here?
Time. I think ultimately we're chasing time, and the ability to make workers more efficient at what they do is generally what we're looking for. There's just so many automatable tasks that have been hidden behind the fact that they're vaguely ambiguous. But we've already built up a lot of the systems. Most people have internal APIs that may be available for them. but those themselves have the problem that they're not necessarily easy to access. They're not particularly easy to kind of build around all the time. So this is kind of unlocking the value that's been there for a long time. Uh, and I think by integrating these together, using LLMs and these agents as a form of kind of the glue that's holding these systems together, we're going to save a lot of time for a lot of people.
Okay, I think that's a pretty appropriate answer, and I do agree with you. So I think we can probably call it there, unless you have anything else related to QStar that you think the audience should be aware of.
No, I think that's probably covered the most of it. I'm sure if anything else pops up, we'll hop back on here
We'll
again.
be in the we'll be in the comments as well. If you do have any questions, myself or Spence will hop on and drop some replies to the comments as well. So it's a big topic, quite a scary one if you look at it the wrong way. But I think whenever there's this news, I mean, I talk about it a lot in the community, but that's the price we pay of being in a space like this. Is that you get these big shocks and these this news that sort of makes you terrified every week or two. But if you compare that to the sort of 3 months prior to this OpenAI stuff and the GPTs, where it did get sort of relatively quiet, I'd prefer this chaos and this excitement over what we had prior. Just because it makes you feel a bit more alive, you know. We're already in a space to be in a place that we are feeling like we're on the front foot of something, and the chaos is sort of part of the fun. So if you are feeling concerned, just realize that comes with the space. This is sort of the cutting edge of things here, and these kind of updates and this news is to be expected. So learn to love it if you don't, and get amongst it. And if you aren't already in the community or really taking advantage of all the sort of resources that we're putting out, you can also subscribe to the channel here on the Morningside AI channel for more conversations between myself and Spencer and other people. But yeah, I think we'll probably call it there.
Sounds great.
All right, we'll catch you in the next one. See you later.
Thanks so much, Liam.